On the main stage of the Africa Day celebrations here in New York, and in conversation with our hosts, the permanent observer of the African Union to the United Nations, Ambassador Fatima Kyari. Mohammed, Ambassador, warm welcome and thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me.
This is, of course, your first Africa Day in New York since assuming your position earlier this year. Just talk about the significance of this, and particularly to the diaspora that live in this part of the world.
Well, as you know, thank you to begin with. I'm quite excited to be here tonight. Africa Day is something that I've always followed in all my different capacities over the years. And as you know, the background to this was that in 1963, when our leaders decided to come together and set up this organization, we had been going through a lot as a continent. A number of countries, especially South Africa, was under a very difficult rule, apartheid. And the idea behind it was for us to come together to talk about this dominance and be able to free the continent and move towards independence and move towards integration and self-reliance. So it is very important for us to ensure that every year we actually mark this event in such a way that it allows us and people that have originated from the continent to feel a part of this celebration.
So give us just a brief overview of what people attending this event, this is for people in South Africa and around the continent that are watching. Give them a sense of what an event like this entails.
Well, to begin with, I mean, we're quite flexible as far as how we decide to have it. But this year, what we've decided to do is we've identified a few keynote speakers that will pass very important messages. Of course, as usual, every year there's going to be a message from the chairperson of the African Union Commission. And then we have a number of cultural performances reflecting the rich, diverse culture of the African continent.
Come on.
Ambassador, let's talk about the theme, winning the fight against corruption, a sustainable path to Africa's transformation. You don't have to explain that to me, but why have you chosen this theme in particular?
Well, the choice didn't come from us. It came from our heads of states.
Right.
And if you remember, at the summit earlier this year, the theme was decided, and then the president of Nigeria, President Mohammed was designated as the champion of this theme.
You will also reflect on the legacy of Tata Nelson Mandela, South Africa's first democratically elected president. Of course, the centenary of his birth is a big feature on the UN calendar this year. There's a Nelson Mandela Peace Summit ahead of the high-level General Assembly meeting in September. What does the legacy of Madiba represent to conversations that you are having at the United Nations today?
Well, to begin with, having a role model such as Madiba is critical for us from the continent. And he's not only a symbol for Africans, he's a symbol for the world. And he represents more than anything freedom and forgiveness and the future. And overall, if you look at the essence of the United Nations, why it was set up, when we talk about cooperation and multilateralism, this topic that has become quite sensitive, for lack of a better word.
Well, I think a lot of countries undermine multilateralism, right? I think that's the point.
Well, it is something that we have to work towards, because this is something that has worked for us, and as the African Union, this is a direction towards which we are going. So it is critical, and it is something that he has always promoted as well. So it is important for us to ensure that this message is carried along and that we continuously reinforce that thinking.
Let's briefly touch on South Africa's bid for the Security Council. It has received the endorsement of the African Union. What do you make of the role that African countries in particular need to play when they assume these non-permanent seats on the Council?
Well, as you know, the Security Council is basically the highest decision-making body where peace and security is concerned around the world. And unfortunately for us, 70% of the discussions in Security Council are on African issues. So our participation in the Security Council and us being able to bring our voices to the Council to discuss issues that affect us is critical.
Ambassador, thank you so much for speaking with us. The Ambassador of the African Union to the United Nations, Fatima Kyari Mohammed, the permanent observer, as they call her, to the United Nations, taking up her position earlier this year and speaking about Africa Day celebrations here in New York.